Hello everyone and welcome back to the X and Y National Pokédex Challenge series. Last episode, which is in the card on the top right of your screen and right now in case you missed it, was all about the regional Pokédex in the X and Y games. This is also known as the Kalos Regional Dex, and we completed that, which was the kickstart of this series. Now my end goal is obviously to get the Shiny Charm for a gimmick that we're going to be exploring in today's episode, which is something that went under people's radars despite this game having a reputation of not a lot of features. I am talking about the Friend Safari. This is exclusive to Pokemon X and Y at the time of recording this and has not returned ever since. So you might be wondering why this plays special. Well, there are three main points that answer that question. First, the Friend Safari has boosted shiny rates on all of the available Pokemon. So instead of the game's usual 1 in 4096, Pokemon in these safaris have a 5 in 4096 chance of being shiny without the charm, and that goes to a 7 in 4096 chance with the charm. And there are some pretty cool Pokemon in these. You can get some starters, you can get version exclusives, you can get rarer things like Rarvestas and evolutions. So there's some good stuff in here worth having the boost on. Pokemon in these safaris also have 2 guaranteed perfect IVs, which if you're into competitive or anything like that, that is a huge deal, because you can pass those down through breeding. These IVs are random for all the stats, so a Charmeleon could have perfect HP and perfect attack, or another one could have perfect defense and perfect speed. And then there's one more big thing here, which sadly this one is no longer possible, but we'll get into more of that later. All 3 Pokemon, once they are unlocked in a safari, will have the chance at their hidden abilities. This is pre the ability patch and things, so again, that's not possible now, but we'll get to that here in a bit. Now, how are these Pokemon determined? They are randomly chosen from 3 different groups based on your 3DS's friend code. They can be any of the 18 types, and like I said, they can be starters, final stage evolutions like Muck, which do make them under-leveled from when they're normally obtainable, and they can be version exclusives such as Throw and Sock. So as you saw in the intro there, this episode is going to be all about this mechanic, the Pokemon available, their evolutions, and obviously obtaining them in my national dex. There are a total of 182 Pokemon available through this feature. While most of these are in the regional dex, there are still a handful that I need from here. Now, so you're thinking, Duke, it's 2024. These games came out in 2013. Clearly you have all these, right? Well, not quite. I had one big dilemma going into this, hence the 2+ months mentioned in the intro, and that was a lack of 3DS friends, meaning a lack of available Pokemon to catch. Now, there were a couple ways I went about this. First, I joined a Facebook group that at the time was still active and adding people. This was about a year or so ago, before episode 1 was planned. That's how long this stuff has been building. But when the eShop closed, that group became dormant, and I was still missing some Pokemon. So thankfully, over the past few months, I found a couple solutions. The first one here was various Twitter posts of all just adding people from other YouTubers and just random stuff I saw online. Those helped a ton, and if you added me or I added you, hopefully you got stuff you needed, and thank you for helping with this journey. But that wasn't the big thing. The real MVP, and the thing that made this whole video possible, was SafariCodes.com. This was a website dedicated to Friend Safari code sharing. You would enter your 3 Pokemon and your 3DS code into the site, and then people could add you by replying to your code, and then because of how it's set up, you would see their Pokemon and their code as well. I used this site all the way up until the online shut down on the 8th of April, and through this, I was able to get one of every single obtainable Pokemon. So without further delay, here were the final catches I needed to get. And welcome back everyone. So now we get into part 2 of this video, the evolution grind. Thankfully, one of the friend codes I had since the beginning had Chansey in it. This is huge because on top of Chansey not being natively available in the game, every Chansey you get in here has a 5% chance to be holding a lucky egg. Which, if you do not know what lucky eggs do, they double the amount of XP your Pokemon gets, which stacks with some other stuff we'll get into here. So I taught my Absol the move Thief, which is a TM in this game, thankfully. And I farmed long enough to get 5 lucky eggs for each of my 5 slots for the Pokemon I intended to train. The next step was simply finding the best Pokemon to level up against, which was super easy thanks to this Safari also having Audino in it. Which, if you do not know, these two Pokemon give some of the highest XP yields in the entire franchise, making them by far the easiest and most efficient things to train up against. There was also one more piece to this puzzle. I also used the EXP O power, which stacks with the lucky eggs, and for a set amount of time depending on what level it is, it will also double the XP. So that is 4 times XP that you can get for like 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes depending on the tier. And while it took an eternity to make this level 3, it saved me a ton of time in the long haul. So then it just became a matter of putting my level 100 Mew from an event years ago in the front that had Aura Sphere, with the other Pokemon holding lucky eggs in the other slots. Activate the O power, and then just go to town. And while I was doing this, the first shiny of this series decided to pay me a visit. I was doing this stuff off camera, which is why there's no reaction to it being encountered. But this Jigglypuff, as you can see here, was the first shiny of this series. And this is also my first shiny in Pokemon X and Y in over 10 years. Which, fun fact, these games were the games I got my first ever shiny Pokemon in. It was a different save file to this one, but the game still stands. Here's a picture of it up here beside me. I know it's just a Dugtrio, which isn't anything too spectacular, but at the time, like I said, this was my very first shiny Pokemon ever, and I got it during my default game playthrough. So now with all these evolutions done, some of which require grinding the Super Training feature to get the evolution stones, aka the Thunder Stones, the Water Stones, etc. The stones that you can't buy from the Stone Emporium, basically. Which, by the way, that is not a fun feature to do. You might be thinking, okay, well, what about all the baby Pokemon? Well, I am going to be adding those, along with the remaining evolution items like Magmortar, to the next episode of this series. Now, I have already begun working on episode 3 at the time of this episode going live, which is going to be the final episode of this series. And the focus of that one is Pokemon I need to get from Omega Ruby, or any older generation of the games. As well as some keen-eyed viewers may have noticed, this isn't a lot of Pokemon. So to balance that out, the babies of this episode will be included in that one. Now there is one final elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, however, before we cut to the evolution montage continuing. The 3DS Online. As I'm sure you all know by now, the 3DS Online servers have officially been shut off as of April 9th, 2024. Which is around the time this video is going live, and this impacts a ton of things for the Friend Safari. The first here is that it is no longer possible to legitimately add friends, which means it's impossible to get more Pokemon than what you already have available. The second point here, if your Safari does not have all 3 Pokemon unlocked, it will never be possible to get their hidden abilities. Unlocking the 3rd slot requires both players having beaten the Hall of Fame and both being online at the same time. And hidden abilities unlock when the 3rd slot does. If your Safari has all 3 Pokemon, you can still get their hidden ability. But if you only have 2, you cannot. This does not affect the IVs. And at the current time, Pokemon Bank is still able to be used, but when that changes, Pokemon from the Friend Safari will be unable to transfer into Pokemon Home or any other game outside of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So at some point in time, this will end, and these Pokemon will be stuck in these games. But for now, that is not the case. And with that being said, there is one final surprise here for you all. I got another shiny while leveling up some of these Pokemon. So without further delay, here's the second shiny of this series, a shiny Audino. Alright guys, I can finally record this one this time. This is the second shiny of this challenge, which is awesome. I'm just trying to level up a Larvesta and some stuff right now. And we get the critical catch on it too, which is great. So that is the second shiny of this challenge. Which surprisingly only 2, but hey, 2's better than nothing. So I'm gonna cut, and we'll go back to the PC and we'll go check it out. Alright guys, we're gonna check out this Audino right now. It does have Healer. It is holding an Oranberry, which I did not know these could have in here. It's a minus attack nature plus speed. Hey, Timid. I don't know if that's good for this thing or not. I'd have to look up. But yeah, that is the second shiny of this challenge. Pretty cool. And that's going to do it for this episode, guys. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like on it. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future content, as well as the final episode of this series, which I have some fun stuff planned for, so stay tuned for that. We have Fan Expo Cleveland coming up soon, too, which will be a video, because at the time of recording, this is before that happens. So make sure, because this should go up live before then. So make sure you have notifications on for that, because that's going to be a super fun weekend. We have some other stuff coming up as well. We've got a bunch of GoFest details at the time of recording this, which I have yet to do anything with because I haven't fully read them. So yeah, we got a lot of great stuff coming up here, so make sure you have that notification bell turned on so you don't miss future stuff. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time for the finale of this series.